12 spine-chilling motel horror tales. Terrifying secrets revealed that will haunt your nights. Lisa stumbled into the last remaining motel in her crumbling town, the flickering neon sign buzzing overhead like a warning. The peeling wallpaper felt like layers of forgotten screams. She needed a haven for her young son, Jake, whose laughter should have filled the silent night but instead echoed her loneliness. Exhaustion washed over her as she checked in, the tired clerk's gaze lingering far too long, sparking a flicker of unease in her gut. Once inside their cramped room, the air felt heavy, as if holding secrets. From somewhere nearby, the faint sound of children's laughter drifted through the thin walls, sending chills down her spine. Each giggle twisted her stomach, and whispered conversation snaked through the dimly lit hallway, clashing against the complete stillness. She tried to shake it off, blaming her weariness, but dread clawed its way back as shadows danced around the edges of her vision. That night, while venturing to fetch ice, Jake slipped away without her noticing. Panic exploded in her chest as she called for him, each echo amplifying the stark emptiness around her. The hallway loomed long and dark, stretching ahead like an abyss. A discarded photograph lay crumpled in a corner. Kids just like Jake, smiling on a sunlit day, eyes bright with life that suddenly felt like a cruel joke. Her heart raced. "Mommy?" Jake's voice broke through her fear, a soft plea tinged with urgency. She darted down the corridor, the chill of something sinister curling around her. Footprints small, childlike led towards a door, but stopped abruptly at its edge. What does this mean? Her pulse hammered as she followed the murmurs growing more distinct, a siren's call urging her deeper into darkness. Before she could process this newfound horror, Lisa found herself weighing the odds of asking the locals for help. She burst into the front office, breathless, but the clerk's half-smile said it all. "You know how kids get, always running off," he shrugged dismissively. Rage bubbled in her throat, quickly replaced by the gnawing dread that settled into every bone. They didn't believe her. The crooked smiles of the few residents lingering near the entrance felt like more than mere friendliness. They felt predatory, eyes glinting with something buried beneath their surface. Suddenly, Jake's laughter echoed again, soft, unearthly. It didn't come from where he had gone, it resonated from a unit beside hers. The hallway twisted, warping her sense of direction. Her breath quickened, and just as she prepared to confront the source, a flood of memories crashed over her. She remembered the stories, the ghost tales of lost families whispered in the night, cloaked in the comfort of normalcy. Who had vanished here in the shadows cast by that unforgiving motel sign? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Lisa's throat tightened, thoughts racing. She pressed her ear against the door next door, the laughter blossoming into something grotesque. She peeked through the cracked wood, her heart pounding in her ears. Shadows shifted, a silhouette loomed just out of sight, beckoning her to come closer. In that moment, it hit her like a punch to the gut. This motel wasn't just a resting place for weary travelers. It was a trap. A crossroads for families like hers, their screams muffled and swallowed whole by the peeling walls. "Mommy, help me!" Jake's voice, quiet yet piercing, resonated from the shadows. Silence blanketed her, gripping her lungs as the chilling reality settled in. Her son may not be the first to vanish in this accursed place. Heart racing, she steadied her breath, ready to face whatever waited in the darkness, knowing she was running out of time. The door creaked ominously as Lisa pushed it open, her heart racing. The musty smell invaded her senses, mixing with an unshakable feeling of dread. The dim light flickered, barely illuminating a scene frozen in time. Dust motes swirled like whispers, settling on the ancient furniture that had seen a lifetime of shattered dreams. "Jake!" she shouted, panic slicing through her voice. The room was a forgotten playground, with toys strewn about, their once vibrant colors dulled by grime. The laughter that had beckoned her now echoed hollowly, a parody of joy trapped within these cursed walls. Lisa stepped inside, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. The flickering bulb above her cast erratic shadows, dancing like phantoms. In the corner, she spotted something familiar, a bright blue toy truck, one Jake had loved. Her heart dropped as she approached it, her breath hitching. "Jake?" she called again, more desperately this time. Silence answered, plunging her deeper into despair. She turned back, squinting into the thin stream of light that illuminated the door. Her gut twisted, a sense of wrongness crawling over her skin. In the far corner, something shifted. A shape darted past her line of sight, small and swift. "Mommy!" Jake's voice reached her, not from behind her, but from the shower, the endless echo warping his words in a way that made her stomach churn. She'd read about the things that lurked in dark places, the way shadows could swallow you whole if you let them. The tales she often dismissed as silly nightmares surged back. The hair on her arms prickled as she edged toward the bathroom door, the handle cold under her trembling fingers. "Jake?" she whispered, her voice now barely audible. It felt like stepping onto a tightrope stretched over an abyss. She turned the handle and the door swung open, revealing a cracked mirror and a child's figure crouched beneath the sink. The sight sent a jolt through her, but relief washed over her as she glimpsed the back of Jake's head. "There you are!" she gasped, taking a step inside. But when he turned, his face was vacant, eyes wide and devoid of light. The boy's lips moved as if he were speaking, but no sound emerged. Lisa's heart plummeted as a realization dawned upon her. The boy before her wasn't Jake. It was another child, trapped in this nightmare. Fear burst like a dam inside her as she stumbled backward, her mind racing. "What have you done to him?" she cried out, but the phantom child just stared, a hint of something flickering in his eyes, an understanding of her horror, perhaps, or a warning. "Mommy, help me," the voice returned, hauntingly tethered to her son, seeping through the cracks of reality. Her breath caught as she caught the movement of a shadow floating at the edge of the room, creeping in closer. "Where? Where is he?" she shouted, her terror morphing into fury. The shadows deepened, as if the universe itself were closing in on her. A chilling silence hung heavily in the air, and for a split second, she felt the weight of countless souls trapped in despair. They could be anywhere, hiding behind the peeling wallpaper, beneath the floorboards, lurking in the shadows. "Please!" she yelled, panic now clawing at her throat. The response was a whisper, carried faintly through the air, an almost tender murmur. "Join us." The temperature in the room plummeted as a gust of wind slammed the door shut behind her, shrouding her in darkness. Heart racing, Lisa felt the rush of cold fingers trace down her back, a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking not just in the shadows, but within the very walls that confine her. Desperation ignited her spirit. She had to escape, but in that moment, another low giggle rose around her, surrounding her like a dark embrace. And then, the lights flickered once more. What were they trying to do? What would she give to find Jake? As the shadows cloaked her, she knew she had to make a choice. Would she delve deeper into the malevolence hidden behind the motel walls to find him? Or would she flee, perhaps leaving him to whatever fate awaited him? But then, another voice whispered softly, "Help him." What did that mean? Who were they? The room began to swirl as Lisa felt something pull her toward the unknown, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized she was no longer in control. In that moment, she understood this was just the beginning. The choice applied not only to her son but to the very essence of her soul. What fate awaited her next? Lisa's breath quickened, the darkness wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. With a sudden surge of panic, she turned her back to the bathroom, rushing toward the door. But the room seemed to warp and stretch, the distances between her and escape distorting in eerie ways. The unyielding shadows pulsed, pressing against her, whispering secrets she dared not comprehend. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice echoing, desperate. The giggles rose again, higher and more taunting, echoing in the cramped space. It was a chorus of children, a chilling reminder of joy now twisted into something sickening. Her pulse thrummed like a warning bell in her ears. She stumbled back, a vision of despair flooding her mind. Did she dare to search deeper in this accursed playground? Yet something deep within clawed at her resolve. She had to save him. She had to try. Ignoring the disheartening whispers, she turned away from the door, focusing instead on the shifting shadows that seemed to swirl to life around her. A flicker of her courage ignited as she looked for any sign of Jake among the gloom. "I'm coming for you, baby." The words spilled from her mouth, defiant. The broken toys scattered across the floor groaned underfoot, their once cheerful painted faces now marred by dirt. As she surveyed the trapped room, something caught her eye near the old rocking horse in the corner. It was another child's plaything, more battered than any other, its wood splintered and darkened as if stained by unseen horrors. "Help him," the voice whispered again, floating like a specter through the shifting air. Each syllable pulsed around her, feel through her bones, drawing her deeper into the darkness. What did it want from her? In that moment, she felt a wave of cold wash over her, leaving stinging tears in its wake. Clutching her arms, she scanned the room once more, heart racing. She paced forward, determination pushing her to confront the terror, to search this forsaken place for whatever fragment of Jake remained. Suddenly, a flicker of light erupted from the corner where the playthings lay, illuminating the shape of the phantom child again, now standing with outstretched arms. "Over here!" Its mouth formed the words, but the sound only trickled back as a muttering echo in the air. Her heart pounding, Lisa followed the flicker, moving closer even as the shadows loomed. The room shivered with the weight of unseen eyes, a thousand whispers urging her to turn back. "No!" she shouted, pushing forward. "I will find him." As she reached the broken rocking horse, the air thickened, and the child's laughter exploded again, not from behind her, but all around, a cacophony that twisted her insides. The spirit child vanished in a blink, replaced by a sudden flash of movement. In a heartbeat, Lisa's instincts kicked in. She spun around, only to find herself face to face with the dark figure of another child, just beyond her view. Its expression was now vacant like a gaping void, void of all but longing. She fell backward, terror clawing at her, trying not to succumb to despair. "Where is Jake?" she cried, skin crawling. The shadows thickened, surrounding her completely, the whispers swelling into a disorienting roar in her ears. "Join us, help him!" A scream formed in her throat but never found its escape. Instead, the room began to converge, crushing her under the weight of despair, her surroundings diluting into a mournful whisper. As she teetered on the edge of consciousness, one last flicker of hope glimmered. "Find him before it's too late!" What did it mean? The shadows pulled her closer as the door behind her began to vanish, and she could feel the pull of something sinister rising. This was not the end, it was just another layer of her torment. What sacrifice would she have to make to rescue Jake from this nightmare? The world around Lisa distorted, the shadows lunging forward like a dark tide, each whisper morphing into an echo of her dread. The last remnants of light twisted, flickering manically before plunging her into an abyss of black. Find him, the voices chanted, each repetition chiseling away at her resolve. She staggered back, her senses screaming, but she could not let fear paralyze her. Jake was still out there. Somewhere in this haunted jumble of faded joy and broken promises, he needed her. "Where?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. No answer came, only a suffocating silence wrapping around her like an iron shroud. She clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms, sharp and real. Gathering what little courage remained, she pushed forward against the enveloping darkness. Each step felt like timing a bomb, the anticipation heavy with dread. What lay ahead? Were her choices unfurling like the fraying threads of a carnival ride gone haywire? The room, now truly alive, began to pulse, the walls breathing in sync with her panic. She forced herself to remember the flicker of hope, the vision of Jake, the ghostly child calling to her. It had to mean something just then. A scuffling sound echoed from the far side of the room, tearing through the oppressive silence. Lisa sent a surge of fear-fueled adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Jake?" The tremor in her voice echoed in the void, and she cringed, regretting the shaky call. The shadows hesitated, then surged and twisted, morphing into something grotesque. The scuffling grew louder, more frenetic, like children playing a game too wild, too dangerous. She forced her legs to move, each step heavy with uncertainty, as the scuffle morphed into a chaotic clamor that lured her deeper. "Don't you want to join us?" A sweet voice chimed, dripping with a syrupy innocence that felt like a trap. "No!" she cried, realizing too late how naive it sounded. The shadows twisted at her words, flickering with laughter that scraped against her nerves. Her heart raced as she darted forward again, determined to cut through the clamor. The silhouette of the rocking horse glimmered in the distance, defying the engulfing darkness. Somehow, amidst the panic, she felt drawn to it like a moth to flame, hope and terror blending into a terrifying cocktail. As she neared the rocking horse, something shifted. The air thickened with tension, the whispers turned into a harmony of agitated voices, almost pleading, almost menacing. Help him, they urged. Beneath their chant, anger simmered, hotter than before. "Jake!" she screamed again, but it sounded weak against the rising roar. She reached the rocking horse, her fingers brushing the worn wood, and in that moment the laughter stopped. Silence wrapped around her like a cloak. Heart pounding, she turned back, searching the corners for a sign, something, anything that could help her find him. The room twisted, a nightmare turning into a surreal canvas of misplaced memories, faint images of laughter and joy now warped into grotesque art. Then, she spotted a door half open, a crack of light spilling from within. A pulse of hope ignited deep in her chest. "Jake!" she shouted, pushing toward it with renewed fervor. The whispers turned vicious, swirling around her like angry hornets, but she didn't stop. As she reached the door, a force pulled at her, a cold sweep that made her freeze. The other children appeared, faces torn between mirth and anguish, stretching across the threshold. "Join us," they breathed, voices tantalizing, sweet yet chilling. "No!" Lisa shouted, her voice echoing back like a cannon shot in the silence. "I want tea! I want to let you take me!" With an explosive burst, she flung the door wide open. What lay beyond was the culmination of every nightmare she had ever faced, an abyss that drew her in with a grip stronger than her will. And there, amid the growing storm of whispers and laughter, she could finally see the truth. As shadow figures surged past her, inching closer, a single thought crystallized in her mind. What if saving Jake meant losing everything she loved? In that moment, she realized within the chaos, she could lose herself in the fight for him, or she could succumb to the darkness she saw reflected in those vacant eyes. With her heart racing, the decision was hers alone. Could she truly face the horrors ahead, or had she already stepped too far into the void? She crossed the threshold, the coldness hitting her like a slap. The air shimmered with a thick tension as darkness coiled around her. A weight pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate like a tomb. The light from wherever she stood flickered ominously. Lisa's eyes adjusted, revealing the inner sanctum of the nightmare. It was a long hallway, lined with doors, each one a portal to someone else's horror. The wallpaper peeled away like the skin of the damned, exposing the raw, festering wood beneath. A low hum, almost melodic, emanated from the rooms, each note tugging at her sanity. "Jake!" she called again, her voice trembling, lost amidst the cacophony of the anguished whispers. She turned, dancing between the shadows, straining to hear anything that resembled his name. The walls seemed to close in on her, squeezing out hope. From her left, a door creaked open. Lisa hesitated, pulse quickening. Maybe the whispers grew louder, their fervor urging her forward. She approached the threshold, heart hammered against her ribs. What if it was him? What if it was a trap? Against her better judgment, she stepped inside. The room was dark, cluttered with broken toys scattered through a landscape of dust and decay. In the corner, a child's laughter erupted, bright and piercing. Lisa's stomach twisted. That sound should have been sweet, innocent, but here, it was a knife scraping against her resolve. "Jake?" she whispered, eyes darting around. The room was empty, save for a rocking chair swaying slightly, creaking back and forth, back and forth. No one was there, but the laughter continued to dance around her, agitated and insistent. "Jake!" she screamed, desperation splintering her voice. The chair stopped abruptly. Tension crackled in the air. Then soft steps, like tiny feet padding against the floor, began to surround her. The shadows flickered, swirling like smoke. A figure emerged, a child with milky, lifeless eyes staring into Lisa's soul. "Come play it cooed," extending a bony hand. The other kids emerged, their faces twisted in glee and insanity, teeth too sharp, smiles too wide. "Get away from me!" she shouted, stumbling backward. They laughed, an unholy chorus that twisted her insides. Help him, they chanted, voices merging into a hypnotic rhythm, pulling her deeper into their web. Lisa turned to run, but the shadows slashed out, grabbing her wrists, clutching her tightly. Panic flooded her veins. She yanked against their grasp, feeling the cold drain of their touch seep into her. "Let me go!" she screamed, her heart racing. The child with the milky eyes stepped forward, fearsome and innocent all at once. "He needs you, Lisa. You can't leave him." "Jake!" she cried, eyes wide with terror. Suddenly the shadows began to separate, revealing another door at the end of the hall, a fragile light glimmering through it. With every ounce of strength, she wrenched herself free, pushing against the shadowy hands, panic fueling her escape. She ran, heart hammering, the whispers trailing behind like a pack of wolves. The light grew brighter as she dashed toward it, hope flaring inside her. Overwhelmed, she burst through the door. What awaited her was a whirlpool of color and sound. She blinked, disoriented, the edges of reality blurring. Jake's laughter echoed, but it didn't sound right. "Lisa?" It was him. But the tone, sweet yet sinister, twisted the name into something unrecognizable. And then she saw him, the silhouette of her brother, standing just out of reach. His back turned, the details shrouded in blinding brilliance. "Jake!" She reached out, tearing the distance between them apart. "Help me," he sang, the words like honey, dripping with something darker. In that moment, she hesitated, the truth flashing like lightning. What if she was not the savior? What if she was the real monster in this story? She stepped closer, a chill wrapping around her heart. What if this was just the beginning? Lisa's blood ran cold as she stared at Jake, the light casting strange shadows across his form. Something was off, she could feel it deep in her bones. This wasn't he, the boy she remembered. His laughter, once innocent, now echoed in the twisted corners of her mind, a melody of dread intertwined with a rhythmic pulse of ominous intent. "Jake? What's happening?" Her voice trembled as she shifted her weight between her feet, uncertainty gnawing at her. "Come closer," he beckoned, still facing away, his tone seductive, yet laced with an edge that made her skin crawl. With each step forward, the air thickened around her. The sweet scent of childhood filled her nostrils, cotton candy, fresh grass, but it was tainted, as if draped in a heavy cloak of rot. "Why won't you turn around?" she breathed, panic swelling in her chest. "Because I don't want you to see." His voice trailed off, the shadows of the room swallowing the sound, leaving an alarming silence that felt like a violation of space, a warning against drawing too close. Lisa hesitated, torn between the desperate need to close the distance and the gut instinct screaming at her to flee. "Jake! I came to find you. I'm here to help you. Just turn to me." Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, the shadows shifted violently. The children from the first room reappeared, their wicked laughter piercing through the silence. They circled her now, chanting words she couldn't quite understand but felt in her bones, a dark incantation that whipped through the air like freezing wind. "Help him, he can be free, you must take his place, no. I want tea." The words burst from her lips, a desperate plea tuning into an anguished scream. The laughter crescendoed, and the children lunged forward, their hands reaching for her skin as though they could suck her into their void of despair. Lisa whirled, finding the glowing door behind her the last flicker of hope she had. "Jake, please!" But he remained a silhouette, the light now shimmering with unnatural colors. "You can't leave me," he whispered, the sound layered with a sadness that morphed into a smirk. "You're already part of this." She felt the shadows tug at her hair, pulling, dragging her back into the darkness. Fear surged, igniting every nerve ending as she tore her gaze from him and lunged toward the door. "Let go! I won't be your sacrifice." With all her strength, she broke free and barreled toward the light, heart racing, footsteps clattering against the gritty floor. As she reached the threshold, she glanced back. Jake stood alone, eyes glinting with something terrible. "Help me!" With a final push, she threw herself through the door, crashing into the overwhelming brightness. The transition was dizzying. She landed hard, rolling onto packed dirt instead of polished wood. The world around her shifted, transforming the motel into a desolate wasteland, each breath feeling like a gulp of poison. "Where am I?" she gasped, sitting up, the realization of isolation creeping in. The sun hung in a sickly green sky, and in the distance she saw the flicker of a familiar neon sign. The facade of the motel loomed above her again, but now it was stained and cracked, screams of the past reverberating off its walls. In a moment, everything changed, and she was drawn to it, helpless against the pull. But the whispers charged against her mind, warnings echoing in her heart. What if she had crossed the line she couldn't erase? What if the real monsters were waiting inside? Pulse pounding, she stepped closer. Questions brewed like a storm within her. What awaited her? And was Jake truly lost, or had he been waiting for her to find him all along? She took a deep breath, ready to confront the shadows once more. The door loomed large before her, a gateway to horrors she could barely comprehend. Shadows swirled around her, whispering things she couldn't bear to hear. The neon light flickered, casting grotesque shapes on the cracked pavement, making everything feel alive, shifting, hungry. Just as she reached for the doorknob, a chilling howl echoed through the air, a sound so hollow, it struck her like a physical blow. It reverberated in her chest. Lisa hesitated, a sick feeling of dread creeping down her spine. What if Jake was no longer the victim? What if he was the predator? "Jake!" she yelled, her voice bouncing back at her, swallowed by the famous nothingness of this desolate world. "What have they done to you?" The only reply was the laughter of the children, their shrieks like shards of glass slicing through the thick tension. In the corners of her vision, she noticed movements, small figures flitting in and out of existence, mere shadows. Glimpses of their pale faces filled her with creeping terror, each echoing that same haunting chant. Help him take his place. The realization clawed at the back of her mind. They wanted her to exchange her freedom for his. But was he even worth saving? Was that twisted smirk from moments before a clue to his true nature? Each second felt like an eternity, as the dread wrapped around her like a noose. Panic surged as she felt the shadows gain strength, tugging at her clothes, whispering lies of safety from the dark. "You can find him inside, only the brave can save him." The promises twisted like vines around her throat, squeezing tight. "Bravery?" Lisa spat, her anger blazing through the fear. "That's not what this is. This is a trap." With renewed determination, she flung open the door, half expecting it to be ripped from its hinges. She stepped into the motel's lobby, now unrecognizable, a cavern of despair filled with peeling wallpaper and a stench of decay. Each flickering light overhead buzzed like a swarm of angry wasps. "Jake?" she called out into the bleakness, her voice trembling. She wandered deeper into the darkness, the echo of her footsteps swallowed by an unnatural silence. The rooms, once filled with laughter and joy, stood like tombs. Doors creaked open, revealing nothing but shadows. She could almost feel eyes on her, following her every move. The walls whispered her secrets, reminding her of every moment she had overlooked, every time she could have saved Jake but chose to walk away. Lisa froze. A low moan drifted through the corridor, drawing her back. It was a sound of pain, of loss. Lisa, it was Jake's voice, heavy with sorrow. She rushed down the hall, but the darkness pressed against her, a shroud that thickened with every step. The last door at the end of the hall stood ajar, a sliver of darkness spilling out like a beckoning void. She pushed it open, heart hammering against her ribs. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air crackled with electricity. "Jake?" she called, fear creeping into her voice. "Help me!" The words morphed into a raspy whisper, echoing all around her as the shadows coalesced into a darker form. And then she saw him. Jake lay sprawled on the floor, his body twisted, but his eyes were entirely hollow, deep voids that gleamed like black pools absorbing all light. "Lisa, you shouldn't have come back." Panic gripped her as she reached out. "What happened to you? You need to get up. What if you're too late?" A chilling laugh resonated as the shadows thickened, wrapping around her legs like quicksand, pulling her down. Was the Jake she rescued the same boy who had vanished? Or had the real monster been lurking beneath his skin all along? "No!" she screamed, fighting against the grip of despair. As she stumbled backward, struggling to escape, the door behind her slammed shut with a deafening bang. That was when she realized she was not alone. The dark figures emerged, their mouths stretching into grins that stretched wider than humanly possible. The shadows had no intentions of letting her go. The darkness pulsed, alive and hungry. Lisa's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat of desperation. She darted toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if something heavy pressed against it from the other side, blocking her escape. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, voice cracking. The shadows only laughed, their sinister glee mingling with the deep rasp of Jake's voice. "Lisa, you're too late." His hollow eyes watched her, like twin abysses that threatened to swallow her whole. "They're here for you now." "No!" she yelled, trembling as fear cut through her like ice. She turned to face the figures that encroached, their silhouettes melding with the darkness. They hovered, their twisted bodies writhing in the flickering light, shadows cast from impossible angles. It felt surreal, like a nightmare come to life. One of the figures stepped forward. Its face twisted into something too grotesque to recognize, a parody of innocence marred by malice. "Join us, Lisa. You can't fight what you don't understand. Get away from me!" she screamed, her voice swallowed by the cacophony of laughter that echoed through the room. She stumbled backward, searching for another way out, desperate to find some shred of safety. Jake lifted himself slowly, his form shuddering as he pushed through the shadow's grasp. "They'll consume you. You have to run." "Run? Where?" Her voice trembled as panic surged anew. She dared a glance to the door, but the figures had doubled in number, circling her like vultures with insatiable appetites. Each face was a cruel mockery of childhood, twisted grins stretching impossibly wide. "Help him take his place," the chorus of children's voices echoed, wrapping around her like chains. The Dark Ones wanted her. They wanted to siphon her essence for whatever vile purpose they had devised. "I want," she whispered, though the doubt crept in, gnawing at her resolve. Was it possible, she thought, that by saving Jake, she would only seal her own fate? Suddenly, Jake's eyes flickered. Was there a spark of life, a glimmer of humanity buried beneath that void? "You can't trust them. They feasted on my soul." His hollow gaze seemed to scream at her, catching the glimmers of her own growing doubt. But before she could reply, the shadows lunged. Their gnarled hands reached for her, fingers like claws. She ducked, weaving through the darkness, panic setting her limbs on fire. Each touch left cold trails that burned like fire. "Help me!" Jake's voice shattered like glass as the figures seized him, dragging him back into the dark. "No!" she wailed, her instincts screaming at her legs to move. She couldn't think, she could only react. A flick of desperation pushed her to the window, the last barrier between her and the hell's gate behind. Without thinking, she lunged for the glass. Smashed. The shards sprayed out as she dove through, pain lancing at her skin. Blurred sounds erupted behind her, the laughter turning to howls of rage, and the air changed, thickening. In one heartbeat, she found herself tumbling onto the uneven ground outside, gasping at the cool night air. But a sick realization settled in. The motel stood like a monolith before her, and the laughter echoed hauntingly, mingling with Jake's sorrowful whisper. "You can't escape, you're still part of it." She turned back towards the door, but it warped and flickered, flickering like a dying star as if reality itself struggled to hold together. Behind her, shadows pooled like waiting predators, their grins wide and filled with hunger. What had she unleashed? In the distance, the laughter escalated, drowning out her thoughts. Lisa felt the grips of despair tighten once more. She took a step back as the shadows surged forward, ready to reclaim what she had stolen. Was there any chance of salvation? Would she succumb to the darkness, or could she find a way to break free? What lay behind those walls? Did the motel hold the key to an escape, or would it consume her as it had Jake? One thing was painfully clear: the shadows wouldn't let her go without a fight. And now, they wanted more than just Jake. The ground beneath Lisa's feet felt unsteady, as though it were a bridge suspended over a chasm. Adrenaline surged, and her heart raced as the shadows thrummed at her back, eager to reclaim their lost prize. She stumbled away from the doorway, wild eyes scanning the eerie landscape for a hint of safety. Distant whispers echoed against the motel's peeling walls. They twisted in the wind, sounding like Jake's pleas, buried within the cacophony of the shadows' laughter. Each ghostly echo threaded through the air, tickling the edges of her sanity. What were those things? Were they truly children? Or something far worse? Find the key, Lisa! A voice broke through the noise, frantic and close. The sound recoiled in the space between her ears, unmistakably familiar. It was Jake, his voice now a rasping whisper within the shadows. It's the only way. Don't let them take you. But where? Where was the key? Panic bubbled within her as she recalled the wretched motel lobby, the scattered remnants of lost lives and faded memories. Maybe she could find something there, a clue, a guiding light. Desperation ignited her feet, and she sprinted toward the glass door, now a warped window into the madness within. The air thickened with the realization that time was short. The shadows surged violently at her heels, ravenous and relentless. She thrust the door open and tumbled inside, her heart pounding like an out-of-control metronome. Inside, the lobby was cloaked in darkness, furniture shrouded and turned against her like mocking sentinels. A musty smell filled her nostrils. Stale air tangy with decay. "Where are you, you monsters?" she shouted hoarsely, voice barely escaping her throat. Her words fell flat in the endless shadows, met only by their amused silence. Then she spotted at the old reception desk, its surface scattered with an assortment of forgotten trinkets, each seemingly significant yet lost to time. She rushed over, pushing aside cracked picture frames and dust-coated keys, her hands trembling. "The key, where is it?" And then she saw it a glimmer beneath an ancient, rotting ledger. She plunged her hand past the decaying paper, fingers brushing against the cool metal. She yanked the key free, its metallic weight grounding her amidst the chaos. A burst of laughter erupted from the shadows, now lurking beneath the treacherous light overhead. "You think that will save you?" they taunted, their voices thick with mockery. The room quaked with their anticipation, each creak of the floor echoing the urgency of her heart. "Shut up!" she screamed, her voice ringing with defiance as she spun to face the encroaching darkness. She clutched the key tightly, glaring at the swirling forms. They writhed restlessly, hunger evident in their grotesque shapes. "What do you want from me?" "Join us!" they howled, a chorus pulling at her, threatening to unravel her very being. With a jolt of sudden clarity, Lisa thought of Jake, his broken state amidst the shadows. He had cried out to save her. This wasn't just about her survival, it was the fight against an evil that wanted to shape her into one of them. She raised the key high as if it were a sword, gathering her courage. "Not today!" But even as the defiance surged within her, the shadows lunged. Dark fingers slashed through the air, reaching for her, the grins widening with each inch they gained. The confrontation was building to a fever pitch, and Lisa's thoughts spiraled. Was this her chance to end it all, or would this only draw them in closer? Then, she remembered the other doors. The motel had more, each could hold secrets, and maybe even the way out. The key wasn't just an instrument to unlock a single door, it could be her lifeline. With a scream of terror and hope, She turned and raced toward the row of doors lining the walls, her breath hitching in her throat as the darkness followed, hungry and relentless. What awaited her behind each door? Would they lead to salvation or further despair? The chilling laughter pursued her as she grasped the key tightly, desperate to unveil the mysteries lurking in the motel's grasp. Lisa burst through the first door, heart pounding, eyes searching. This room held remnants, dusty furniture, cracked mirrors, and faded photographs. Living faces long faded into emptiness stared back at her, mouths frozen in silent screams. But it was the echoes of their laughter that struck her, reminding her of Jake's innocence. Focus, Lisa! You've got to find him! She snapped herself back into reality, running toward the next door. A momentary rush of warmth hugged her. As she opened it, the space breathed like the real world, alive with colors. Yet, the joy held an insidious undertone. A twisted amusement park loomed inside, a carnival of horrors where carnival rides squeaked and fractured laughter twisted into bone-chilling howls. Jake! She cried, fear clawing at her throat. But the laughter swallowed her words, echoing with distaste. Throwing herself into the next door, she skidded into darkness again. The shadows swirled, and the shadows grew crueler with her hesitation. Lightened only by a small, flickering bulb, the room revealed a table covered in toys, broken dolls, rotting teddies, but most chilling was the glowing brass key that lay threatened by Shadow's approach. That's it. Glancing over her shoulder, she lifted the key, determined to reclaim Jake. Help him, the chorus of shadows cried, their whispers seductive, pulling her towards their indifference. Fear coursed through her, pushing her into the leather-bound journal nestled among the debris. She flipped it open with shaking hands, scrawled words illuminating stories of vanished souls. Each entry detailed a life snuffed out, lost forever to this accursed motel. Jake's not dead. I won't let him be. Lifting her head, the shadows lunged again, grasping for her. She didn't have time. She gripped the key tightly. Instead of running blind, she quickly turned, sprinting down the hallway's oppressive gloom, searching for salvation behind the next door. The door swung open to reveal a small room filled with a few scattered remnants. Faded innocence wrapped around her. The faint outline of children's laughter played in the distance, cruel and taunting. But in the center, in the dim light, stood Jake. His eyes had regained color, yet trust flickered away like a shy flame. Lisa! He cried, voice soft but tethered with mounting dread. Help me, I'm here, baby. I'm coming. She pressed into the room, heart soaring and breaking at once. But the threshold warped, shadows spilling through like liquid night, pulling her towards their embrace. Join us, take his place, they chanted, insistent like a marching army of despair. No! I will not sacrifice him. Each step drew her closer, the light dimming as she reached for Jake, voice cracking under desperation. Just hold on, I've got the key. The shadows clawed at her legs, grasping at her clothes, whispering promises of destiny, but they weren't hers. Take my hand! She yelled, catching his gaze, her courage wavering and igniting at once. Mommy! Help! The connection of their hands felt electric, his warmth seeking solace. Together they steeled against the darkness, and it howled in protest. She thrust the bright brass key toward the nearest door. Its lock glimmered with possibility, merging hope and fear. Run! On 3! 1, 2, but the shadows lunged again with a howl, fingers reaching for their escape. 3! They bolted together, laughter interrupting the chaos, joy blooming like a spring flower amid winter's grasp. The key met the lock, and the door swung open with an agonizing screech, revealing a blinding light. The brightness was blinding, it surged into them, embracing with the warmth of forgotten love. Together, they sprinted through, only darkness remained behind. But as she stumbled into the light, the world shifted. The motel's horrors began to warp. The screams faded. When she landed, they were no longer in the motel. Instead, they stood in their backyard, the moonlight draping their home in silver warmth. Mommy? Jake whispered, rubbing his eyes against the light. Sure, it's okay. You're safe. Relief flooded Lisa's heart. her limbs heavy with exhaustion. But a chill settled beneath her skin, an echo of shadows waiting to reclaim what was once theirs. "Mommy?" Jake's voice trembled with uncertainty. "There's nothing to fear, honey. I promise." But she felt the weight of secrets pressing. A tiny part of her knew that while they were free, the darkness still lingered, ever watchful, ever hungrily waiting for the tiniest crack. Would it ever stop? "Can we go inside?" Jake asked, turning towards the house, innocence briefly returning. "Yes, let's go inside." As door closed behind them, she held her breath, promising to stay vigilant. For every shadow fought, her love would hold its ground, fueling her resolve to keep the darkness at bay, no matter the cost. Behind them, the motel faded into mere memory, but the battle she fought would linger. Because some scars never truly heal, and some shadows never fade. "Mommy, will we ever go back?" Jake asked, innocence wrapping around him. "No, sweetie. Never again." With a determined sigh, Lisa pressed forward, ready to face the dawn, holding Jake tight. "We're safe for now," she whispered, promising him a lifetime's protection from shadows yet unseen, guarding their world against the darkness that threatened to intrude. As they moved inside, the first rays of dawn pierced the night, and she knew hope still twinkled among even the darkest places. And though the shadows stretched onward, they would remain vigilant, steadfastly guarding the love that kept them whole. Because light would always conquer darkness, or so she hoped. Now, if you love this story and want to keep experiencing spine-chilling tales just like this, you need to subscribe immediately to my channel. Don't wait even one more second, smash that like button right now to help feed the algorithm. I want to hear your thoughts, theories, and reactions down in the comments section. Flood it with your ideas. And remember to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Your engagement matters. Thank you for being a part of this journey.